They say the stars have always been watching us, burning silently across the endless dark, waiting for humanity to take its seat among them. But when the Great Galactic Council opened its doors to every known intelligent species, the chair marked for Earth stayed empty. No one from our world ever arrived. For generations, the others wondered if humanity had perished, destroyed itself, or simply never existed. Yet the truth was far stranger, because humanity never begged for acceptance. We were never lost. We were just waiting. In a distant chamber orbiting the twin suns of Vega, the assembly of civilizations gathered once again. Thousands of races filled the grand hall, shimmering with light, sound, and languages that bent reality itself. Each year, the question was raised, who will take the human seat? And each year, silence answered back. That silence became a legend. Some said Earth had ascended beyond material existence. Others whispered that the species once known as human had turned away from the stars, choosing solitude over unity. Whatever the reason, the empty seat remained, a symbol of mystery, pride, and fear. But one day that silence broke. It started with a signal. Not a cry for help or an introduction, but a message written in mathematics so perfect, so elegant, that it stunned even the oldest minds in the council. No coordinates, no demands, just proof. Proof that humanity still lived, and that it had been watching. The message ended with a single sentence that shook the galaxy. We did not forget you. From the cold moons of the ardent cluster to the molten archives of Virelon Prime, the news spread faster than light. Species that once mocked humanity's absence now waited in uneasy awe. What kind of civilization could vanish for 1,000 years, evolve unseen, and then reappear with the calm of an ancient god? What they didn't know was that humans had never needed their counsel. While the galaxy fought over borders, technology, and titles, humanity had gone inward, deeper into thought, into art, into the very fabric of consciousness. They had learned how to travel not just across space, but through it. The stars were no longer destinations. They were notes in a song humans had begun to understand. Now, as the message spread, the Great Council prepared for what they thought would be a reunion. Envoys polished their translation orbs, banners were raised, and every being waited for the ship from Earth to appear. But none came. Instead, the stars around the chamber began to shift, bending into unfamiliar constellations. The galaxies themselves seemed to move, drawn toward something unseen, and then, without warning, every light in the hall went out. The darkness that followed wasn't empty. It was alive, humming with an ancient rhythm that felt almost human. A voice whispered across the minds of billions, calm and unshaken. You never invited us. We were never waiting for your approval. The council members froze. The empty seat at the center began to glow. Something, someone, was finally coming. And the galaxy would soon learn what humanity had become. The light from the empty seat grew. Brighter until it wasn't just light, it was memory. Every being in the hall felt it. A wave of images and sensations that weren't their own. A sunrise seen through human eyes, the sound of rain on an old roof, the laughter of children playing under city lights. For the first time, species who had never set foot on Earth could feel what it meant to be human. It wasn't technology. It wasn't telepathy. It was something deeper, a connection that reached through thought and time itself. The council trembled. The air shimmered, heavy with emotion and something none of them could explain. A tall, silver-skinned delegate from the Sillar Dominion rose first. Identify yourself, they demanded, their voice echoing through the vast chamber. But the light didn't answer with words. Instead, the seat pulsed once, and a quiet presence filled the room. A presence that carried warmth and sorrow in equal measure. We watched as you built your alliances, the voice said, echoing softly. We watched as you fought for peace and destroyed for pride. We saw your wonders and your mistakes. But when the council was formed, we chose not to join. The delegates exchanged uneasy glances. The council's oldest archivist, a being of living crystal, spoke next. Why would your kind refuse unity? The assembly was meant for all intelligent life, for harmony. The voice paused, as if considering the question carefully. Harmony, it repeated. You speak of harmony, yet you demanded obedience before understanding. You invited us to kneel, not to stand beside you. The chamber fell into silence. For centuries, the council had seen itself as the moral compass of the galaxy, a collection of enlightened species guiding others toward balance. But now, faced with the calm defiance of a species that had once been young and fragile, that image began to crack. In a distant corner of the room, a smaller being whispered, "Are they gods?" The voice answered gently, "No, just human." The light shifted again, revealing faint outlines, a figure half-formed, flickering as though reality struggled to contain it. The shape was unmistakably human, not perfect, not divine, but real. A shadow of flesh and will standing before civilizations that had forgotten what such things could mean. As the figure solidified, more memories poured through the hall. Images of human exploration, ships built not for war but for discovery. Worlds touched but never claimed. Civilizations helped, then left in peace. Humanity had not vanished. They had simply grown beyond what others could measure. But there was something else beneath the calm. A warning. "You gathered the stars," the human presence said, "but you forgot the darkness between them. You built a council, but not understanding. Now something is coming, something older than us all. And it doesn't care about your unity or your power." The room trembled as the lights flickered again. The delegates looked around, their fear finally surfacing. "What do you mean?" one shouted. "What is coming?" The human's eyes lifted, if they were eyes at all. And for the briefest moment, the stars themselves seemed to twist in fear. "You called us because you felt it," the voice said. "We return because we remember it." Then the light began to fade, leaving only that single glowing seat in the center of the council chamber. The human presence was gone. The echoes of its words lingered like smoke. No one dared to speak. But in the silence that followed, every mind in the galaxy knew one truth. Whatever humanity had become, it was not here to ask for acceptance. It was here to warn them, and the real story was only beginning. The great chamber stayed silent long after the human presence faded. Even the air seemed afraid to move. Every delegate, every leader, every observer knew that the galaxy had just changed, and none of them understood how. The human voice had spoken of something coming, something older than all of them. Yet no sensor, no telescope, no ancient archive could explain what it meant. For the first time in generations, the council didn't feel in control. It felt small. A week later, meetings were held in every system. Scientists, diplomats, and soldiers argued across holographic channels. Some wanted to search for Earth immediately, believing that only humans knew the truth of what was coming. Others said it was a trick, that humanity had found new power and was playing with fear to gain control. The galaxy that once boasted unity now began to fracture. Among those searching for answers was a young xenologist named Dalen. He wasn't from a powerful world or an old species, just a quiet thinker who had studied the ancient transmissions from pre-space Earth. He believed that humans had always been different, not because of their technology, but because of the way they dreamed. "They imagine before they build," he once said, "and they feel before they fight." Now, as reports came in of shifting star patterns and strange gravitational echoes near the edge of known space, Dalen felt that the human warning wasn't just poetic, it was literal. Meanwhile, deep beneath the council's main city, the archivist convened a secret session. Stored within its crystalline body were memories older than light itself, fragments of history collected from extinct civilizations. In those memories, it found traces of something similar, something that appeared in cycles. Entire star systems once vanished without battle or decay, as though reality itself had folded inward. The records called it the Returner, an ancient force that consumed understanding itself. If the humans had seen it, then perhaps they had been preparing all along. Back on Earth, or what used to be Earth, the planet no longer looked as it once did. The oceans shimmered with strange energy, and the continents pulsed faintly, almost alive. The humans there had changed, too. They no longer relied on machines in the same way. Their technology was alive, merging with thought and biology. To them, the Council's struggles were distant echoes. They had left that need for validation behind. Yet when the voice returned from the council chamber, warning them that the galaxy had stirred, they listened. The time to stay silent was ending. Across the stars, a pattern began to spread, radio signals cutting out, ancient satellites awakening, and dreams shared among species that had never met. Children on distant worlds started drawing the same image, a ring of light devouring the stars. Fear turned to panic. In the center of it all, the empty human seat still glowed faintly. Some said it was waiting for someone to return. Others believed it was a door holding something back. Dalen stood before it one night, watching the glow shift between blue and gold. "If they warned us," he whispered, "then maybe they're trying to help." But deep down, he wondered if humanity's warning had come too late, or if the thing they feared was already awake. Far beyond the Council's reach, in the void between galaxies, something stirred. A shadow without form, a whisper without voice. It had heard the humans speak, and now it was listening. The council chamber had become a fortress of silence. Every day, new reports arrived, worlds vanishing from sensor maps, communication networks flickering, stars dimming without cause. Yet the seat marked for humanity still burned quietly at the center, the same steady glow as if watching everything unfold. No one dared to sit in it, but every meeting began and ended with eyes drawn toward it. It had become a reminder that something greater than politics or pride was now moving among them. Dalen could feel it in his bones. Sleep no longer brought rest. Only visions of darkness swallowing light and a faint heartbeat echoing through the void. He wasn't the only one. Across the galaxy, beings of every kind began to dream the same dream, a vast ring of light surrounding a single blue planet. Some believed it was a sign of salvation. Others whispered that it was a countdown. The archivist called for Dalen in secret, its crystalline body flickering like a dying star. "I have seen the pattern before," it said, its voice slow and heavy. When the oldest civilizations fell, they saw the same thing in their skies. A ripple that erased memory itself. I thought it myth. Now I know better. It turned its gaze toward the human seat. They knew this was coming. Dalen's hands trembled as he looked at the faint shimmer of light. "If they knew, why didn't they stop it?" "Perhaps they couldn't," the archivist answered. "Or perhaps they became something that no longer fears the end." Outside the council world, fleets began to gather. Ships from hundreds of species filled the skies, each carrying weapons older than their histories. But none of their scans could detect an enemy. There was no object, no form, nothing physical to fight. Just an emptiness growing stronger by the hour. Entire sectors of the galaxy began to flicker like candles in the wind. Then, for the first time in centuries, Earth sent a transmission. It wasn't a voice or an image, only a pulse. A single rhythmic beat, repeating again and again. When the Council's analysts decoded the pattern, the results stunned them. It was a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, human. Every pulse matched the timing of the flickering stars. Humanity wasn't just warning them anymore. It was synchronized with the event itself. The chamber filled again as every leader and scientist assembled. The human seat glowed brighter, almost blinding. A hum filled the air, deep and resonant, vibrating through every mind present. "It's coming through," someone whispered. The stars outside the council's great windows began to bend inward, as though space itself was folding. The hum grew louder until it became a roar, and the light from the human seat erupted outward, covering the chamber in white. Through the glare, Dalen thought he saw figures, shapes of people made from light and memory. Their faces looked human, but their eyes carried the weight of eternity. "We did not abandon you," one voice whispered inside his mind. "We built what you could not see." The walls shook as reality itself seemed to tear open. Dalen fell to his knees, trying to breathe through the storm of energy and sound. Outside, the stars vanished one by one. The entire galaxy seemed to be collapsing toward a single point, the space above the glowing seat. And then everything stopped. The chamber floated in silence again, suspended in the kind of stillness that feels like the moment before a breath. The human presence lingered, unseen but overwhelming. Every being in that room understood that whatever was about to happen next would decide the fate of everything that had ever lived. The light trembled once more, and a voice, clear, calm, and utterly human, said, "Now you'll understand why we never asked to join you." And then, the light split open. The light split open like a wound in the fabric of the universe. But what came through wasn't destruction, it was reflection. The beings in the chamber saw themselves not as they were, but as they could have been. Every species, every mind, was shown a vision of its own potential, what it might have become if it had chosen differently, if it had learned to create without fear. The vision was overwhelming. Some collapsed under the weight of it. Others wept silently, and then, just as suddenly, the images vanished, leaving only the glowing seat and the low, steady hum that seemed to echo the rhythm of a heart. Dalen gasped for air, feeling as though the universe itself had been holding its breath. "It's not an attack," he whispered. "It's a message." But even as the words left his lips, the floor beneath the council chamber trembled. The stars beyond the window began to distort again, this time into something jagged, chaotic, like a mirror breaking across the sky. The archivist's crystal form flickered violently. "No," it said, its voice warping. "This isn't them, this is something else." From the rippling light above the human seat, a new shape began to form. Not human, not alien, but something between thought and matter. It pulsed in uneven rhythms, twisting the space around it. The light that had once seemed warm now carried a cold sharpness, a static hum that scraped across the edges of the mind. "They tried to contain it," the archivist whispered, almost to itself. "The humans. They didn't warn us about it, they trapped it." Inside themselves, the realization hit Dalen like a physical blow. The empty seat, the silence, the absence of Earth, it all made sense now. Humanity hadn't vanished to avoid the council. They had vanished to keep something imprisoned. Whatever the ancient force was, the returner, it hadn't been destroyed. It had been bound inside humanity's evolution. And now, by calling them back, the council had set it free. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted across the hall, ships scrambled into orbit, and communication channels burst with confusion. The stars around the council's planet flared one by one, burning white before going completely dark. A ripple of black energy spread outward, devouring everything in its path. Dalen stood frozen, watching as the figure of light in the chamber flickered between human and something far darker. He could hear thousands of whispers, voices overlapping, merging, crying out for help, and warning at the same time. "We carried it for you," the voice said through the static. "We thought we could bear it alone." The light pulsed, splitting again, revealing a second form beside it, darker, deeper, pulsing like a heartbeat out of sync. "But every prison fails eventually." The two lights clashed, twisting space itself into spirals of sound and color. The council chamber cracked apart, its walls stretching toward infinity. Dalen held on to the shattered railing, the hum of reality vibrating through his bones. He saw in that moment what the humans had become. Guardians, not of peace, but of something that could erase creation itself. The archivist's voice echoed faintly through the chaos. "If they lose control, everything ends." And above them, the stars began to move, not drifting, but falling inward, pulled toward the growing storm of light and darkness that now tore through the heart of the galaxy. For the first time, Dalen understood the truth behind humanity's silence. They hadn't stayed away out of pride. They had stayed away to protect everyone else, but now the seal was broken, and whatever had been waiting inside them was finally free. The galaxy itself seemed to scream. Stars folded into silence as the two forces, human light and the shadow it had carried, collided at the center of the council chamber. The explosion of energy wasn't fire or sound, but emotion, pure and raw, pouring through every mind that could still think. Memories bled together. Voices from 1,000 species merged into one endless echo. Dalen saw everything at once: the rise of humanity, their wars, their unity, their final choice to turn inward and face what no one else could. They hadn't vanished. They had descended into themselves, binding the darkness that fed on consciousness, keeping it from spreading. They had been the wall between existence and oblivion. The human light pulsed brighter, struggling to contain the shadow twisting around it. The council's great world shook, the ground cracking open beneath the chamber. Dalen could barely hold on as the archivist's crystal form shattered, scattering fragments of memory into the storm. Through the chaos, he heard the human voice again, calm but strained. "We are not gods. We are the gatekeepers. We were never meant to hold it forever." The shadow lashed out, pulling energy from every living being nearby. Dalen felt it tug at his thoughts, his fears, his sense of self. The universe was being rewritten, one idea at a time. And then, through the blinding light, he saw them. The human figures, countless and luminous, rising from the energy around the seat. They stood shoulder to shoulder, forming a circle around the darkness. Each one radiated something painfully familiar: hope, love, sorrow, courage, all the emotions that had once driven humanity forward. Together, they spoke with one voice. "You think the void consumes light? But it is light that defines the void." The words echoed through creation, and the human circle drew tighter. The shadow screamed, its shape fracturing, breaking into pieces of black dust that dissolved into the void. The stars flickered back to life one by one, the energy storm collapsing into silence. The great hum faded, leaving the council chamber glowing faintly, half destroyed but still standing. Dalen fell to the ground, gasping. The human forms were fading now, dissolving into threads of light that drifted upward like smoke. "Wait!" he called out. "Where are you going?" "What happens now?" The voice answered softly, almost tender. "Back to where we belong. The seal is restored, but not forever. The universe must learn to guard itself. We can't return again." Dalen reached out, his fingers brushing the fading light. "You saved us." "We only reminded you," the voice replied. "Everything you need was always human. You just forgot," and then the light vanished completely. The chamber was quiet once more. The stars burned steady. The council members who remained stared at the empty human seat, now dark for the first time. There was relief, but also grief, a sense that something ancient had ended. Dalen looked toward the shattered window, watching the galaxy spin back into motion. He thought it was over, until he noticed one final spark glowing faintly in the air. It hovered above the human seat, pulsing gently, almost like a heartbeat. The archivist's fragmented voice whispered faintly from the debris. The shadow was bound again. "But not destroyed." Dalen's eyes widened as the heartbeat grew louder, matching his own. "They didn't seal it away," he whispered. They passed it on. And in that moment, deep within his chest, something answered back. The chamber was quiet again, though the silence felt different now, heavier, alive somehow. The faint heartbeat still pulsed inside Dalen's chest, soft but steady, like an echo of something far older than him. He pressed a trembling hand to his heart and realized it wasn't only his pulse he felt, it was theirs. Humanity's legacy, the rhythm they had carried across time and light, now living inside him. Outside, the council's fleets drifted in stunned silence. The stars, once torn apart, glowed calm and clear again. Worlds that had fallen dark flickered back online, communications returning in waves of disbelief. News spread fast. The humans had returned, saved them, and vanished again. Yet for all the questions shouted across the networks, no one could find a trace of Earth. Every attempt to locate it showed only empty space. Some said the planet had transcended reality, folded into the energy that now held the universe together. Others believed it still existed, hidden, watching quietly as it always had. Dalen stayed behind as the council began rebuilding. The archivist's fragments had been collected, and its memory crystal flickered weakly in recovery. "You hold what they left," it told him. A seed, perhaps. Or a burden. He didn't know which was true. Every time the heartbeat inside him quickened, he felt distant voices stirring in his mind, soft, human, and familiar. They didn't command. They didn't warn. They simply were. The council called Dalen before its restored chamber weeks later. Leaders from across the stars looked at him not as a researcher, but as something new, something connected. "You were closest to them," one delegate said. "What did they mean by guarding the universe?" Dalen thought for a moment before answering. They didn't mean power or control, he said quietly. They meant responsibility. Every mind, every life, has to carry part of what they held back. It's not theirs to protect anymore. It's ours. His words echoed through the hall, and for the first time since the light had vanished, the council understood the truth. Humanity hadn't left a warning. They'd left a duty. Years passed, and legends grew. Some claimed to hear a faint heartbeat when they looked toward the galactic core. Others said they'd seen lights moving in the dark, human figures walking between stars. Dalen never stopped feeling the pulse inside him, though it softened over time, blending into his own. He used it as a guide, helping rebuild what had been broken. When new worlds joined the council, they learned the story of the empty seat and the species that never begged for acceptance. The human seat was never filled again. Instead, it remained empty by choice, a symbol of what unity meant when it wasn't forced. Visitors often stood before it in silence, feeling that same quiet hum in their hearts, as if reminded that humanity had never truly gone. On the day Dalen's life came to an end, he looked up at the stars and felt the heartbeat one last time, slow, calm, eternal. A voice whispered through the stillness, familiar and kind. "You kept it safe. That's all we ever wanted." Then the stars seemed to shimmer a little brighter, as if smiling. The universe felt lighter, steadier. Humanity's seat remained empty, but its presence was everywhere, woven into the rhythm of life, the pulse of thought, the quiet courage of every being that dared to dream. And in that vast silence between stars, the heartbeat continued, unbroken.